my chariot awaits. I have the 1987 Toyota Camry. This is actually a late 86. It was the new 87 model before they were out. It was like a pre-release kind of thing. My dad bought this November of 1986. I think he said he paid $16,000 for it. Yeah, that was cash, thanks. This car has been through hell and back about 17 times. I've had numerous videos on it. It's covered in pollen because it's that time of year. And let's just take a walk around it. This has been hit in the front. It's been hit in the front again. It's been hit in the front again. This headlight is sort of not in there. That's got a dent in it. This is rammed in. The paint's coming off the bumper. The paint started peeling here, the clear coat, I guess. Hood's not aligned here. This was before they did the T logo. It used to just say Toyota. More missing paint on the bumper. That's just from shitty repair jobs. The gap over here also was never that big in the past before it was smacked up. That's just a ding. This was the last accident my mother was in it. She was the one that propagated all of these problems. Looks like the hubcap is a little cracked there. The mirrors on it actually fold in. That was a feature, but it didn't make that much of a difference. Do they fold out too? Yeah, they do. So if you smack something, they're supposed to fold out. So that's a nice little thing. Some cars still do that. Just a little ding there. The rest is mostly intact. It was smacked in the back. Another car had driven underneath it because it was on a downhill slope. So the front of the other car, which was low, was underneath the back of this. Back in these days, they used to put a separate marker light like that instead of the wraparound shit they have now. It says Toyota Camry. This is the LE. And in later years, they changed the taillights a bit. More scuffed bumpers. You know, all that great stuff. And coming around here, I think the gas door used to line up. I don't know what the deal is with that. The antenna used to work. That's, I think, about the only thing that broke on this car over the years. So there's a cable tie with a stick and it's been glued, and it was a power antenna. There was an alarm system, the Ungo box and Daco security system, for what it's worth. This side is actually in reasonably good shape, believe it or not. This car was kept garaged for most of its life. So let's go take a look at the interior, and then of course I'll start it up and take it for a drive. So here it is. Put it to accessory. Vacuum fluorescent display on the clock, still works. Turn the key on. That sound is the automatic seat belt. This one was already, you know, closed there, so that's that. And yes, it even has a check engine light. It's not running, of course, so that's supposed to be on. And it's just doing a lamp test right now. But I just wanted to show you that after all these years, although the auto function doesn't work anymore, you can hold the button down That one's a little noisy, but just the same. I'm not going to touch the mirrors. I guess we could just tweak it a little bit. Yeah, it moves. Still work. A little creaky in that, but they work still, so there's that. The AC quit years ago, so that doesn't work, but the radio works. And there's a relay. Click, 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 click. Maybe I'll put the windows up so I could show you that. Hear that click? The click. That's impressive. Cruise control was here, but you had your set coast and Excel resume, they called it. Turn signals work, but the left is, you gotta hold it. If you put it, it either stops or buzzes. Like that. Right seems to work. Yeah, that's really it. Hazards should probably still work. They do. 202,506 miles. And most of the car still works after being through hell and back countless times. Now, my mother destroyed this car because she smoked in it. So you can see the headliner is brown from all the nicotine. This is browned. I bet these lights still work. They've never been, I don't even think the bulbs have ever been replaced. The dome light, I'm sure, still works. Look at the size of the mirror. They don't even make mirrors like that big anymore. That's impressive. The upholstery, it's darkened over the years. The door locks still work. Can you believe that? I mean, clunk! Damn. I mean, damn. The blower works as well. A little noisy. The lights, it has lights in it. They stopped working. My dad says it's a cold solder joint. And if you smack it good, then it'll work. I think that might be a sensor to sense inside cabin temperature, but I'm not sure. Other than that, here's the shifter. It never used to be that way. It just is now. Overdrive switch there. And there's actually an indicator that lights up like that. I've showed this car before. It also has the ECT button. I think electronically controlled transmission, normal or power. Normal really only lets you take it in first gear up to about 5,000 RPM or so, and it shifts. If you put it to power, it'll go up to near red line and then shift. The lift for emergency exit flashes the light there, still works, and beeps and does all that great stuff. You squeeze the two jobbies together to open the glove box. Basic car. This never used to be discolored like that. I don't know why it is. Looks like partial cigarette burn here. Oh, and the metal door handles. I'm going to get out, so I'll show you the seat belt if I can. When I open the door, it's noisy, but it works. Another cigarette burn in the seat. That's definitely my mother, because she's holding something, trying to put it in the car. The camera's what she's trying to put in and burns the seat. Because, God forbid, you wait 3 seconds before firing up a cigarette. So let's open the hood and talk about that for a bit. Oh, and the light in the door, they still work also after all these years. Now, because this has been bashed in so many times, the hood only opens a smidge to get your fingers in. So you gotta like just do that, and that's all you get to barely reach in there. And release it. This has a prop rod, and we'll take a look. Original engine. This is an old clanky engine because it too lost oil pressure. That was my mother's fault, as usual. It's a long story, but in one of the accidents she was in, the place that did the repairs on the body did a shitty job, and they stole the relay that controls the cooling fans on the radiator. Why they would do that, we don't know. Maybe they needed it for another car. So this engine overheated and bad. Well, anyways, we got it home. Everything was fine with it for years and years. And then one day out of nowhere, just be running and the oil light would come on, but then it would go out. And it would come on and it would go out. And it would come on and it would go out numerous times. And we just sort of ignored it because it never made any funny sounds. So we just let it be. And then one day it came on and it stayed on. And still nothing happened. And then another time it came on, and that's when it happened. She definitely had no oil pressure. The sender is this red thing here. That's been replaced a couple times, I'm sure. My dad had a pressure gauge that he screwed in there, and I remember being at the mechanic with my dad, and he screwed that in, and indeed it was reading 0, but other times it would read pressure. So that was fun. The starter's been rebuilt a couple times and then I think replaced. It looks too shiny. The alternator looks pretty shiny, but I don't remember about that ever being changed. I'm not sure. It's very hazy. It's been way too many years. But let me see if I can get you a better shot. I don't know if you can see this. That's the alarm siren. That's crushed from one of the many accidents. Windshield washer. This thing is the cruise control, and it works off of vacuum. This is a cable that goes to the throttle over there to hold it open. Spark plugs, of course, have been replaced a few times. Spark plug wires have been replaced. One time my dad was driving with this years ago, and it had a heavy misfire, and it turns out it was one of the spark plug wires just quit. It's fuel injected. That was pretty new stuff, although the 86 and maybe even 85 Camrys had fuel injection as well. Power steering here. Like I said, the AC used to work. It's down in there, but that's been out of charge for years and it's not being fixed. Wiper motor back there. It's easily had 4 or 5 batteries in it, maybe even more over the years. This particular battery was actually out of old Clanky. When he got rid of that car, because the battery in here was like 6 years old, I said, how old is this one? At the time it was 3, so I said, yeah, swap that in. So he did. Overflow for the, what do you call it here? Radiator. Different radiator cap. There's something like a tinfoil shield down there, not sure what that's about. I think the valve cover gasket has been done once or twice on here. Not sure what this Gazmo does, but it's got a big heat sink on it, so that might be important. Airbox. This here is the diagnostic connector for the check engine light. And I don't know if you can see this little thing here. That's a paper clip that my dad bent, and he keeps it in there. And you open this, and you got to short a couple of pins in there, and then it flashes codes with the check engine light, and then you look them up. But yeah, it's still here. It still runs with over 202,000 on the clock. Like I said, it is an old clanky engine, so when I do start this thing, you're gonna know. So let's start it up. This is a cold engine and has not been started in 3 days. How do you beat that kind of fucking reliability? How do you possibly beat that kind of reliability? It's clanking, you hear it. As it warms up a bit, the noise will subside. So I'll let it just warm up for a minute or two, put the tripod away, and we'll go for a ride. You'll also notice that there's a seatbelt buckle, and that's because these shoulder belts are just that. There's a separate lap belt that you still have to put on manually. But anyway, we're running. Starts right up, it runs, the brake light is on because the parking brake is on, and that's it, everything is good. Now, it's interesting because when I took this car home, and the reason why, I got a few things to talk about. First of all, the Whiff's car is not here because it's being repaired. No, there's nothing wrong with it. I drove it to the repair place and it drove there. It's just that it got really beat up after 175,000 miles that one has from New York roads. And let me give you an example of that. This is why the car needed to go in the shop. Do you have roads like that? That's fucking ridiculous right there. And after 21 years, it just shakes the absolute living shit out of it. So that's why this car is here. I drove that out to my dad where the repair place is, and then he gave me this to take back home. So I've had it for a few days and I've been driving it around. You know, why use the gas in my car? The hell with it. Use his gas. He hasn't driven this car in about 6 months, but yet it still just started right up like it was running yesterday. No problem. I was mentioning about the oil light coming on and that, and the reason that happened, that we surmise, is because the pickup tube in the oil pan, the screen on it was completely plugged, and we think what happened was because of the severe overheating, it just cooked whatever crap was in the engine, and it solidified in that, so it really had poor oil flow, and that's why we had it. This gets up to temperature really quickly, but it never goes above that. So apparently everything's working fine. Radiator fans kick on and that. Now you may have noticed also earlier that in the corner there, it may be hard to see now, but there's an indicator that says lights. And that was a feature that Toyota had on their cars up until old Clanky didn't have it, but even the 2001 Camry still had such a feature. The Whiff's car, being a 2000, has that. And that will turn on under one of two conditions. It'll turn on if there's a brake light out. Well, I'm sorry, if you put the parking lights or headlights on and there's a bulb out in the back, it will warn you and tell you by putting the light on. And if you step on the brake and a brake light is out, then it will illuminate then. Of course, if you have multiple lights out, then that light's just going to be on. But when I went to leave my dad's house, I had noticed the indicator was on, and I told my dad, and he said, "Oh, that's erroneous. It's, you know, it acts up now. It's old and this and that." Well, it turns out he was actually wrong. He says, "Actually, while you're in the car, let me take a look." So he had me step on the brake, and sure enough, the high mount brake light is out. So now if I step on the brake, now it doesn't do it. Really? It did it every other time. Well, it made a fool out of me. Maybe the light magically started working. I don't know. But that light would illuminate when I would step on the brake. Anyway, enough rambling. Let's take this for a ride. We'll go around the block or something and, you know, just drive around a little bit. So, parking brake off. Motor mounts are shot. You step on the gas and it just fucking drives. I'm serious, it just drives. Now, the entire suspension on this car, like the Whiff's car, is completely knackered. It's just shot. I'll go to the right here for a little change of pace. The suspension on this is just shot. There are clunks and really bad sounds that this thing will make. There's something in the road. Okay, that's not nice to be there. Still just drives, it runs quiet. You don't hear the clanking like you did in old Clanky. Well, that bull just went over the fence. I think we'll head to the left. Sounds like a stand plan. The transmission in this car is still the original, but it's been rebuilt, if you want to call it that. It was factory rebuilt by the dealer. They did it in those days. That was because of my mother, once again. She was driving one day. CV joints are worn, everything on this is worn. She was driving one day and claims that she ran over something. Whatever this piece of metal was that she ran over punctured the transmission pan, but she was only just a couple of blocks from where she was going to at the time. So there were no real problems. She got there and that was the end of that. So after she did that and she got back in the car to go home, the car was driving like old Clanky when the transmission on it went out, where it had to rev up to about 5,000 RPM before it would start to move, and then it would barely move. And she drove it something like 10 miles that way. So any hope of the transmission working was gone. Believe it or not, we actually looked into replacing the transmission pan, but it was either just not worth getting or something. So my dad epoxied it. That's been epoxied for probably 20 years at this point, and it's still holding just fine. We refilled it with fluid and put a bottle of that Lucas shit in there, and wouldn't you know, although the transmission was a bit wonky, this fucker ran and still shifted for another year before it needed to be rebuilt. See, it only goes up to about 5, but she still moves. We're going 45. This car fucking drives. Why my dad doesn't register it as a classic, I don't know. Star in the windshield, another bullet hole right there. for 202,000 miles. This is pretty impressive. You hear all those clunks? We don't have the bumpiest of roads in the neighborhood, but elsewhere we do. And I'm not going to go to where I showed you before. Let's make a left, I guess. Yeah, I don't know what that sound was. Last I had this car, the power steering was shot, and it would just cut out randomly, and it was whining and going, wah, you know, the whole time. Well, I'd finally quit, and my dad had the pump and the high pressure hose replaced, and it works now. It still seems like you got to give it some effort, but I mean, it steers, it goes. It's definitely better than no power steering, and it's not as bad as I felt in other cars. So it definitely works. Maybe it always was this stiff and I don't remember. I learned to drive on this car when I became of driving age, and it's still in the family all these years later. Fucking amazing. It stops, it goes. It's got its quirks. It's, you know, sometimes it bogs down a little. Should we go? Yeah, let's take it up here. We'll go one block this way. The drive flickers with the turn signal. It actually did that since new. And besides the suspension clunks and everything worn out in it, it drives remarkably well still. And it's sad that it's in the shape it's in because of my mother. This car, I mean, you can't... If none of that bad shit happened to this, my dad would still probably have this as his own car. And if the AC went out, you know, I'll bet that cheap fuck might have even fixed it. Actually, it did go out once before, many years prior. I think the magnetic clutch fucked up on it. So we got a junkyard compressor, and that ran for 5, 6, 7 years. He's got a logbook somewhere that has all kinds of information. Everything that was replaced in that. So this is an 86. This car is 35 years old in November. I guess it would be 35 years old. It's a classic for sure. And you gotta say, I mean, it's still, you can't beat a startup like that. That was really impressive after 3 days of sitting. And I'm pretty certain that when he started this for the first time in 6 months, it probably cranked right over and started up just fine. Honestly, I really wouldn't expect anything less. The car's got character, it's got quirks, it bogs down here and there, but it'll go, it'll get up to speed. You know, if you really stomp it, it's like, okay, we're going. No problem, you know. Clunkety bumpity. So anyway, I'm around the corner from the house, so let me get home, and then I will park it, and we'll finish up. All right, I'm back and parked now. The Italian was outside, so I didn't want to fuck around with her there because she'll just stare. She has nothing better to do with her life. There is a problem we've been having with starting it. Maybe you can hear that whirring. That's the radiator fans. And there's the lights indicator, which didn't come on through the whole drive. So that was interesting. Sometimes when you turn the key to crank it, it won't crank. But this time it did. It seems to idle fast. Not sure why that is. The motor mounts are shot. Put it in drive. There's a clunk. Go to reverse. There's a nice one. Back in drive. Reverse. Yeah, it's got no motor mounts. But you don't need those. See, it seems to idle fast. And, you know, he just lives with it, whatever. I don't know if the camera can make it out, but you can still hear that tick, 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 tick. But it's a lot quieter now. I'll just go by the grill. I'm not going to open the hood again. There's the radiator fans. Yeah, there's two. They both work. I had the hood open the other day, and they were both running. So that still works. Not a single misfire. Absolutely solid, steady tone. Yep, just does its thing. That's a tow hook, by the way. That black thing, there's one on the other side also. An unintended side effect of it idling too fast is when you shut it, it kind of shakes at the end. Which could just be worn motor mounts, but it almost feels like it might want a diesel, but never ever does. I'm thinking it might just be motor mounts. I guess I could shut it in gear and see if it does it there. I guess we could try that. Yeah, there was no dinger. It was a beep, 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 like that. Okay, we're in gear. There's too many cars passing by. It certainly shakes pretty good because the motor mounts are gone. Let's see. Oh yeah, it just shuts right off. Okay, so it's just worn motor mounts. That's all it is. Yeah, so that's it. It was your basic Econobox Japanese car. The 1987 Toyota Camry, the very car that I learned to drive on. And yeah, it's been through the ringer and been to hell and back 17 times. But goddamn, if almost everything on this car still fucking works. This is a car. I know it's going to happen. One day my dad's going to say, you know, I never drive the 87 anymore. I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm going to say, you can't get rid of that car. What part of this don't you understand? And then I'm going to have to take it. And then I'll have 5 cars. It's sad. It really is. Because it's one day it's going to happen, I know. But probably not anytime soon. I keep telling him to register it as a classic and shit. And get classic insurance on it. It goes nowhere. There's no reason why not. He's just dragging his feet about the whole thing. But, yeah, I mean, you can still get everything on this car working again. You can probably find a power antenna for it. And that can be replaced. The AC, there's guys. You got to find the right guy. Motor mounts and suspension parts can certainly be had and gotten. And that, so, you know, and then you can find a good body guy and maybe he could actually fix this up a bit. So yeah, it's still around. 202-509. This is quite the car. And it was 16 grand in November of 1986. I think that included tax. So it was more like 15 and change. But yeah, my dad has certainly gotten his money's worth out of this thing. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up. It's just amazing that after all these years, everything still works. Oh, and by the way, The radio actually has AM stereo.
Customers want everything now.
And the light is on. You can turn it off. But I don't even know if anybody still transmits in AM stereo anymore. There was an option for a cassette on this. I don't think CD, or maybe there was, but it was like super duper expensive. And there was probably a higher up model that had a sunroof and all that crazy shit and stuff like that, but there's nothing quite like this particular car, just your basic LE. There was the DX or the deluxe version, LE being luxury edition. The Big 6 is the XLE, that's the executive luxury edition, pardon. But yeah, the DX had the manual windows. I don't know how that worked with this. I guess maybe you didn't get this piece and you just had a crank there or something, because you wouldn't need all these switches. So that had manual door locks. And you could get this car in a manual, but he wanted automatic. His old Dodge Aspen was automatic as well, and cars before that were, but he drove manual when he was in the Army, so he knew how to. And later on, when he got his 87 Nissan Sentra, that had a 5-speed manual, so he had to like relearn real quick. And this was the first car that he ever bought that had AC as well. And let me tell you, we used to go on road trips with this car. We drove to Virginia, we drove to Vermont, and we were in Maryland, and a few other states in the area, of course, New Jersey and Connecticut and all that. And this AC has the economy button as well right there, and that would run the compressor less, I guess. I don't know exactly what the function of it was. It was to save fuel or something, because the compressor puts a load on the engine, so it would run it less. But even on economy, my sister and I were in the back seat with a big blanket on us, and my parents were just up here and the AC is just blasting, and that was it. But yeah, he used to put it on econ all the time. And the controls here are motorized, and as far as I'm aware, they still work. I need the key. Radiator fan is running again. Yep, still works. And auto would have the car automatically select which one of these to use based on maybe that sensor or something. I'm not sure. So he used to use auto. I'll leave it there. I guess that works still. If it had a light that worked. Yeah, it still works after all these years. Looks like there's foam in there. Yep, there's something in there. Well, whatever. Oh, and also one other thing. If you... Why is it up there? You could select between this and that. This is supposed to be a wide dispersal vent or something. That's something you'll never see again. Never, ever, ever see that again. So, anyway, this was a more in-depth look at the 1987 Toyota Camry. So, I thank you very much for watching. Make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, and take care. We'll check your engine later. Bye-bye.